if you're all set, Ben, take it away.
All right. Good to see so many of you guys coming back 5 times in a row here. This is great. Tonight we're going to be doing a new model. The model itself isn't going to be particularly exciting, but we'll sort of review some of what we've covered about assembly in Fusion to get that model going, and then we're going to step into drawings in Fusion. It's pretty important part of your design process, especially if you're going to be printing out any sort of plans or templates or anything that you want to put down on paper. There's some nice tools in here for turning your model into a 2D drawing, and we'll cover some of that tonight and just sort of get you a good rounded out tour of what you can do with drawings in Fusion. So like I said, this is class number 5 tonight. We will close out the pre-show model here and start something new. We're going to make a simple box tonight, and like I said, we'll go through some of the assembly process here, and if you get a little behind, as you said, we'll be stopping every so often to ask questions, and if for some reason you get too far behind or you just want to sit back and watch, these are always recorded and shared within the TMA membership, so you can come back and check them out later if you need to. So out in my data panel here on the left here, I'm up in my TMA Fusion project that we've done all of our models in thus far. And I've got a new model up in front of me. First thing I like to do is save it right off the bat, and we're just going to call this a box. I'm sure we could come up with something more descriptive, but this will work. So this is going to be our box project, and we'll hide the data panel here. I can exit out or hit the grid button here to get that out of the way. And this is just going to be like a simple tray. We're going to give it a bottom and 4 sides. And before we get into the modeling itself, we're going to go into parameters. This was a new thing we covered last week, was the model parameters. That will drive what we're building. So if I pull down the Modify menu all the way to the bottom and pick Change Parameters, we're going to put in a few measurements that are going to be important for our box. So under User Parameters, I'm going to click the plus sign, and we're going to give it some inside dimensions because I want to build this box to fit something specific. I want the inside dimensions to be the size that I need. So we're going to call this one inside length, and we can change these later, but I'll say 4 inches for the value here in the expression. We'll click OK. We're going to put a few more in here, so I'll click the plus sign again. We'll give it an inside width. Now let's make it 3 inches so we have something different. Click OK on that one. Now we'll add another one, inside height. Let's make that 2 inches deep. And then finally, we'll give it a material thickness. And let's say for the first round here, we'll make it 1/4 inch. So I could type in 0.25 or 1/4. That'll give us 1/4 inch. So there's all of our dimensions that we'll be working with. Click OK. And for the woodworkers in the group, which I imagine there are a number, we're going to just make a simple butt joint sort of construction here. So the bottom piece is actually going to cover that inside size plus the material thickness coming out. So I'll show you how that works here.
Ben,
first thing we're going to do...
Ben,
oh, sorry.
Could you explain what a butt joint is?
Yeah, butt joint is just 2 boards flat up against each other. There's no fancy joinery like dovetails or box joints. It's just one flat surface against another, usually glued up.
I know we're in the middle of this, but I have to. You don't happen to have that branding iron available to you?
Let me pull up a picture. So yeah, quick sidebar. My dad has a shop in his new house that he's set up, and between him and my family, we came up with the name Butt Joint Workshop. And Tony Rouleau made a branding iron based off of the logo we provided him.
That is awesome.
There we are. Handmade by the Butt Joint Workshop.
Thank you for sharing.
So,
I apologize.
yeah, no problem. I had a feeling that was on your mind when you asked me what a butt joint was.
It's been a butt kind of day, so.
Excellent. All right. Serious business here.
Yep.
And then there's modeling too. So under my box assembly project here in the top level, I right-clicked on box. Oh, let's see. I got to do one thing here. I always forget this. Oh. You know what? Never mind. Oh, there we go. I have a program here that shows my clicks and keystrokes. It's just a little slow to load. There we go. All right. So if I right-click on the top level of the project, I'm going to say New Component. And we're going to call this, I'll click on the component name here, call it the base. And now that base is activated, I go to Create Sketch, and I'll click on the top plane here. And it doesn't need to be centered, that's just something I like to do sometimes. So I'm going to go under Sketch, Rectangle, and make a center rectangle. And I'll click in the origin point here and just drag it out. Rough size. And we'll put some dimensions on it. So we'll go under Sketch, Sketch Dimension, or the D key. Let's click on the width here, and it's 4.8 inches is what I drew it out to. So we're going to start typing here. We'll do a little expression here, because that inside width we'll type INS. So the inside width, but we want that to be bigger, so we're going to add 2 material thicknesses. So you can say plus material thickness, plus material thickness. You could do it twice, or you could say plus a couple parentheses and say 2 times, start typing material thickness, and hit enter. So if you see it now here, it's inside width plus 2 times the material thickness. I'm going to copy that, and I'll make another dimension for the height here, or the depth, well, yeah. Set the dimension out here. I'm going to paste that in, but instead of the inside width, I want the inside length. There we go. So now it's taken our inside size and added in the material thickness. So in this case it's 3 plus 2/4 inches and 4 plus 2/4 inches. So now I'll stop my sketch. And the usual pattern here is we sketch and then extrude. So we're going to go under Create, pick Extrude, click on the rectangle. I'll drag it up, but I want this to be the material thickness as well. So for that extrude height, I'll start typing in MAT material thickness. Pick it from the drop down here by clicking on it and hit enter. We've got our first piece. We'll save that. All right, any questions before we start adding more pieces to our assembly?
I don't see anything over in the chat, Ben. Anybody want to have any questions they want to ask real quick before we keep going?
No.
Okay, we got a couple coming in. How did you save?
Oh, sure.
How did you save it then?
Ah, at the very top of the window, there's a save button. It looks like a old school floppy disk. That's all I did.
Okay.
I put in a I saved it when I first started. That's when I gave it a name.
Couldn't get the formula to.
Formula. Yeah. So when you're editing a sketch, editing a dimension, if I place a dimension and I start typing, it is a little, admittedly, it's a little hard to see because if I put a dimension in, oh, it won't let me here. Normally I only get a little tiny text box that's only big enough for a number, so it can be a little tricky to type it out. But you start typing in, so this is width plus 2 times thickness. Here, we'll redo that. So here I just have that tiny text box. Anytime you type a parameter, it's in red here, and because it's not the full name yet, you have to either click it or hit enter on the right item here, and then it puts it all in. But if I click away now, or hit it, actually, it doesn't always take. You got to hit the enter key to get it in the text box, but then you got to hit enter again for it to commit to the dimension.
We went over this pretty in depth in class 3 or 4. 4. No, it was last class. Yeah, class 4. So if you get a chance, want to really go over it real well. Ben does that in the last class, and that's on the website.
Yeah. So sometimes it's easy to get lost in parentheses. So if you don't want to do that, you can see inside width plus material thickness and plus material thickness again. It's the same result, and you don't have to type the parentheses, but yeah. All right, next step, I'm going to go up and right-click on the top level of our model here in the browser, say another new component. I'll click on that component and give this one a name. We'll call it side A, because we're going to have sides of 2 different lengths. Hit enter. And I'm going to create a new sketch. And instead of using these 3 planes, I'm going to sketch right on the top surface of my base piece, because that's where I want that piece to end up. So right now I'm sketching on that base we just made. I'm going to go sketch rectangle, 2-point rectangle, and I'll snap to this top corner up here and drag it down. So automatically it's matching the height of my box because it's picked up that I want to constrain these corners to match the base underneath it. So all I need to do is add a dimension for this rectangle. I can click the top edge here, or I can click between the 2 vertical edges. I'll click the top edge here and kind of place it out here and click. But this is going to be your material thickness again, so I'll type MAT, material thickness. Pick it and hit enter. Now that's 1/4 of an inch, and if we change that, it will also change. Stop sketch, and we'll create extrude and bring this up, and this is going to be our inside height. Enter, enter. There we go. Now, one of the things we covered in a previous class is how to copy components around. First thing, I'm going to go back up to the top level of our box and activate it. And this side piece, it's not tied down to the base yet. I'm going to undo that move. First thing, I'll take the base, right-click on the base, and ground it. Just as it's useful to have one piece that's locked into space when you're doing assemblies. And since our side is already sitting where I want it, this is where we use the as-built joint, which I think we touched on a bit last week. So under Assemble, do an as-built joint. and we're going to select a rigid joint just to lock it in place. So the first thing I do is pick the component I want to move, although it's not going to move, but click on the side and click on the base to select those two components, and you can see it wiggles there to show you that they're tied together. We'll click OK. So now our side is locked in. If I right-click on the side piece and do a copy, and then I go back up to our box, or right-click on the box and sort of paste it up into that assembly. Not paste new, just a regular paste, because I want it to match the other side. Now I get this move and rotate control here, and I'm just going to drag it over past the end here, throw it out in the middle of space with this arrow to drag it over. Click OK. Now we have another instance of that side piece, and that'll be a little more important later on when we get to our drawing. And then this is similar to what we did with our table assembly. I'm going to assemble this side piece to the base. And since it's not built in place, so this is when we go assemble with a regular joint. So I'll go assemble joint. And this is going to be a rigid joint again, so make sure the type is rigid. I think that's the default. And the first thing I do is I have to select the component to move. So if I zoom up on this, I want to grab the middle of this outside edge here. So I move around until that little assembly coin sort of snaps to the middle of the edge. And I want it to be on the bottom face here, so I'll click right there. You can see the little coin here on the side. I'll turn my model around. Now I've got to tell it where I want that coin to stick to. So I'm going to pick the center of the base here. Click on there. And that looks perfect. Click OK. Now the reason I did this assembly first is because it'll making the next side a bit easier. So up under the box project, we're going to make another new component. This is going to be our side B. So we'll say new component. Call this one side B. And now that one is activated. I'll create a new sketch. And again, this sketch is going to be right on the base piece that we built. So I'll click on the top of that piece. And now I can go to Sketch, Rectangle, 2-point rectangle, or the R key. And I'm just going to draw that other side. So I'll snap to the corner here, and I'll snap to this line up here on the opposite side. And because of that snapping, it sets up these constraints automatically. It knows it's supposed to fill out the full width of that side. So all I have to do is add a sketch dimension for the thickness here. So I'll go from this line to this line. So I've clicked onto the two lines, and now I get that dimension. And we'll type in our material thickness again, MAT, material thickness. Hit enter. Stop the sketch. Now we will extrude this up. I'll drag it up a little bit, but what I really want is the height. So we'll start typing that parameter again. Inside height, and hit enter on that. So that looks right. And we'll go up and activate the assembly. And there's a couple icons here for those joints we set up. I don't personally like seeing them because it kind of clutters up the picture. So I'm going to go to the joints folder and just hit the light bulb to turn those off. we'll stop here in just a second. We're going to put in the other side here. This is side B. Right click on that and copy, and then go back up to our box assembly and paste. The same sort of process as before. It pasted it in the same place as the first one, so I've got to drag it over with the arrow. Let's move it off a little bit to the side. So now I'll click OK on that move. And now we're going to do another joint, rigid joint. So get a good view of the piece I want to move here. I'll go to Assemble, Joint, and again I'm going to pick the center of this edge. I'm going to make sure that coin is sitting flat on the face that I want, right there. Click. That looks right. I'll turn it around, get a good view of where I want to put it until my coin kind of snaps where I want it to go. I'll click there. Now technically it did put the two coins together, but it's the wrong way. In the joint window here, there's a button labeled flip. No, it doesn't like that either. Let's see. In that case, the angle is set to 180 degrees. I'm not quite sure why. I can enter a new angle here, or I can just grab the handle and spin it around. Sometimes the coordinate systems on each of these components gets a little screwy, and I'm not exactly sure why it landed where it did, but I can spin it around here, and that's all part of my joint setup, so that's all perfectly valid to do. Click OK. And we've got the basics, or the beginnings of a simple box here. Okay. Question time.
Mike asks, can you show how you did the sketch dimension again real quick?
Yep, when you're within a sketch, let's just pick one at random here. Under the sketch section of your toolbar, if you pull down that menu towards the bottom here, sketch dimension. I also find myself using the D key a lot because that's a command I use all the time, or I've got one up in the toolbar. If you're asking about this, like this thickness here, when I make a dimension, I could have clicked one side here, but see it wants to select that whole edge. So I picked this horizontal line and clicked on it, and then I picked another horizontal line and clicked on it. And by picking those two things, it's saying, oh, you want a dimension between those two parallel lines. So we'll do that material thickness there. And there we go.
From Christopher, so ground prevents you from dragging it around.
Yes, exactly. If you have moving parts in your assembly, you probably want to ground at least one piece so that if you click and drag something else, it doesn't drag the whole model around with it. Perfect example, if I can find it. Nope. There we go. Izzy asked last week if you could do complicated assemblies. This is a little scissor action arm here with the
nice.
Oops. Sometimes it goes a little crazy.
But
that plate on the right side is grounded. Everything else is not grounded. So if that wasn't grounded, the whole thing would move around. But by keeping that plate grounded, then I can actuate everything else.
Dennis Franzen, does it matter if you have components within components, or should they all be by themselves?
No, you can definitely have components within components. Think of it as like if you're familiar with sort of the manufacturing world, you have assemblies and sub-assemblies. So if I have a particular, nut and bolt combination that I'm using in a few different places, that could be one component with a nut component and a bolt component inside of it. But you can treat that whole thing as one group and copy it or use it in multiple places.
How do you get the side? How do you get the side to snap or line up when you move it over
after the copy?
Yeah.
Like when I copied this side piece and I dragged it out to the side, it wasn't snapping to anything, and even if I had sort of put it right in place, there would be nothing to keep it there. So I could have dragged it over and just set it about in the right spot, but I prefer to put a joint, an assembly joint on there. That's what actually snaps it in and locks it into place. And that's important too, because if I change the size of this, the assembly joints will make sure that everything moves with it. If I just drug it out like 4 inches, it would always be 4 inches, and if I made my box longer, this would still only be 4 inches away from where I pasted it. So quick example, because I use the assembly joints, now if I change these dimensions, so like 4 to 4.5, the side pieces follow, and they're out at the edges where they should be, because I explicitly told Fusion I want you to assemble one edge to another edge.
Very cool. All right, we are good on questions. We're about the halfway point, Ben.
Yep, excellent. One other feature we'll add to this just to demonstrate something. Even though these are all separate components, I can still do operations sort of at the higher assembly level. So case in point, I want to put a hole through 2 pieces. I could go into one of the sides and do it, or I'm going to create a sketch on this side piece. But notice I'm up in the bot level of the box here. So I'll create a sketch on the outside of the box. I'm going to make a circle, so under Sketch, Circle, Center Diameter, and I'll purposely throw it a little off-center so I can put it where I want it. One of the constraints here, horizontal, vertical, doesn't apply just to lines. If I give it 2 points, it'll make those 2 points horizontal or vertical to each other. So I'm going to hit horizontal, vertical, click on the center of my circle, and then click on the origin point down here, which I know is centered. And now it's forcing those 2 points to be vertical to each other, so I just centered that thing and I didn't have to put in a construction line or anything. Now I go to Sketch, Sketch Dimension. Let's give this a 3/4 inch diameter. And we'll do another sketch dimension. And I want it to be distance down from the top. So I'll click on the center of the circle and the top edge of the box. And we'll make that 1/2 inch. Yeah, how about 3/4? Doesn't matter. We can change it if we want. Stop the sketch.
Can I stop you there real quick?
Yes.
Apologize for the interruption.
It's all right.
John has asked it. He says, your images are easier to view on the screen than mine. How do I change the settings for easier viewing? Well, that you can you, Ben?
I guess I'm not quite sure what you mean. There's different visual styles. Like if you, down at the bottom of the window here, there's a little computer monitor button. You pull it up to visual style, you get different types of drawing styles. So like there's shaded, there's no edges. Shaded with visible edges only, that's what I usually use.
Thank you. And he was asking about changing color components, colors of different components.
You can give them appearances, and then there's also a... I have to apologize. I actually don't do this very often, but there is a way to... Let's see. Component colors. I know it's in here. I apologize. I'm not going to try to waste too much time finding it, but there's a component color swatch down in the bottom here, but I know that's not it.
Okay. Let's move on.
Yep. But we can come back to that. So that sketch I just made, I made it on the side piece, but it actually is living in the sketch folder of the assembly. And I'm going to create an extrusion, create extrude, and pick that circle. And I can drag it through multiple components. So even if I have like different components, but I want one hole to go through all of them, I can do that here, and it'll apply it to whatever components it goes through. So I'm going to say do that distance through all to cut out those holes. And just to top it off, I'm going to go to Modify, Chamfer, and I'm going to chamfer over the edges of our hole. So I'll click the inside edge and the outside edge of each hole until all four of those edges are selected, and we'll make it, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch, and hit enter. We'll save it. Now, let's get into some drawing stuff. So this is pretty basic. I could make a drawing of the whole box, which we'll do. We'll start with one component here. Let's say side B, because that's one with the hole in it. If I just right-click on side B here in the browser, I will say Create Drawing. And it's over in this Create Drawing window, it says Components 1 selected, because that was the side I had right-clicked on. I could make it for the full assembly, but for now we'll do just the side. And it's got some defaults here for drawing. We want to create a new drawing. Most of this stuff I don't bother changing inches or units. And paper size, it defaults to 11 by 17. I think for this one, let's make it 8.5 by 11. Not that it matters, but I'll click OK on that. And it has to sit and think for just a bit when it fires up the drawing space here. So all that's loading up. Any quick questions?
We had one from Mike. I think John answered it for him though. Of course, I'm all lost. How do you pull up the SketchUp or the sketch palette real quick?
When you're making a sketch, it should just open up the sketch palette window. If you don't see it, you can go under the main menu up here and say View, Reset to Default Layout. Sometimes those windows get drug off screen or don't show up where you think they should.
Any questions, guys, before we get moving on to laying this out in the plan set? Doesn't look like it. Let's move on.
All right, so actually, since I clicked away, it went away, but when the drawing first opened here, it showed a view of that piece under my mouse cursor, but it's not there anymore. That's okay. Up under the toolbar, there's a Drawing Views section, and this first one here is called a Base View. So I'm making a drawing of that side piece, so I'll click on Base View, and now, let's see. Oh, I think because I started over, it's grabbing the whole box again. That's okay. Click. So it's saying place the base view. I've got to give it a place on the drawing. This drawing view window came up here, and we can give it a few different settings here. I can pick what orientation I want to see. So there's straight on views, top, front, right. Home is the sort of default view. I've got some isometric views, which are like this. We will pick from orientation, I'm going to go back to the front view. There we go. And there's the default view for tangent edges. It's just sort of how to draw edges of where curved surfaces meet flat surfaces. There's nothing really like that here, but and then our scale. So under scale, I can change this to 1:1. This box is small enough that it'll fit on one sheet of paper if I want it to. I'll make it 1:2 just so I have a little more room. Click in the center here just to place it, and then I click OK. Now it's a nice black and white drawing of that view. Now if I didn't want to see all of this, if I click on that base view, you get the sort of same object browser that you're used to in the modeling space. You can see the box, the base, the sides. I could turn off all of these except for side B, and now my drawing is just side B. Or I can turn them all back on again, and the drawing updates. Then we can add, I can add more base views if I just want to throw a random view off in the corner somewhere, but projected views are pretty nice here. That way we can sort of set out the top view and the side view, and they're all connected like they should be. So if I go under drawing views and pick projected view, click on that. Now you see by my mouse cursor it says select the parent view. So I'm going to pick this front view that we just placed and click on it. And now as I start dragging my mouse around, if I drag up, now I get a top view. So I'll click there to place that. If I drag down, that's a bottom view. That's not very interesting because that's just a rectangle. But if I go off to the side, I get another side view. So I'll drag one out here and click to place it. And even if I drag up into the corners, I get that isometric view. I click there to place it. And if I'm done placing views, I just press enter. Now these are a little off the page here. I can drag a box around them. And I can't just, oh, never mind. Well, sort of. I can move a few at a time. So like I click this bottom left corner one and I'm dragging it over. But this isometric is still up here. I can click the little handle in the center, bring it in like that, or I can click and drag these other views in. But because of the way that they're projected out, they're linked to each other, I can only move this one up and down so it stays lined up, perfectly lined up with the parent view. So I'm going to save this real quick. And by default, it's calling it box drawing. It just took the name box from a model and put drawing at the end of it. Save it there. And we can start putting some dimensions on here, but actually before I do that, I'll show a couple more views. Say you have an important detail you want to show off. There's a detail view. Maybe you want to blow up some feature here, so it says select the parent view. I want, let's say this front view, I'll click on it. And now by my mouse pointer it says specify the center point of the detail that I want to show off. So I'll click one of these little corners down here. And as I drag out, it kind of draws a circle around this area. So click there. And now, in my drawing view, let's make this bigger. Let's make it double size, 2:1. Click there. And click OK. There we go. Now this label down here, it says Detail A. So it's sitting over my title block. I can click and move that by dragging the handle, put it right there. But now I've got a blown up detail view of this corner at twice the size normal. But I can dimension that like anything else in the drawing. So if I want to show the important dimensions to whoever's going to build this, there's a dimension up in the toolbar. There's different specific kinds of dimensions. You can just use the dimension tool. That'll usually give you the one that you want. So if I click on dimension here, I can pick any existing line and it'll kind of snap to it, or I can click between two corners. So if I click this corner and this outside corner, now I've got a dimension between the two. Same with, I could just click this line and it's going to give me a dimension for that line. I can go down to the side view and click the bottom corner to the top corner and get an overall height. And from the dimension tool I can also pick this hole that we cut out. I'll make sure I pick the inside one. It's showing that as a diameter of 3/4 of an inch. And one other thing to show you is called a projected view. So if I wanted to get a sort of a cross-section view of something, I'll click projected view. Now again, it says select the parent view. I'm going to get a projection of this view here. Oh, you know, I picked the wrong thing. Sorry about that. Not projected view. Section view. That makes more sense. Section view. Click on this one. Now it's saying, where do you want to cut your cross-section through? I'm going to try to cut through the middle of this hole, so I can grab the center point here. And now you can see it's sort of drawing this line between the two arrows. That's where I'm going to cut my piece in half here. Oops. Draw another, it likes a second point here. There we go. Oh. Apologies, I don't use this tool as often. There, just press enter. There we go. Now it's asking me to place it somewhere. If I had picked a bigger sheet of paper, this would fit better. But we're just showing things off at this point. So I've clicked out here to place that view. I click OK. And now for the section view where I've cut through the material, it's got these angled lines to show the cross-section, but you can also see the detail of the inside of that hole. So I could draw a detail here and zoom up on this, or I can just get in here and add a dimension and go from one point of the chamfer to the other point of the chamfer. So that's a way to sort of pick into the cross-section and dimension something there. I'm going to save this.
Ben, John just asked the question about adding a through dimension to a diameter or to a diameter dimension. Is there a way to just add a note below something?
Yes. You can add just about any text you want to a dimension. So I'll zoom in here on this diameter dimension. If I double click on it, I get a dimension window that pops up here. And you got some other options here, like it's defaulted to showing the diameter symbol, tolerance, let's see. There's other stuff you can add here, different symbols. But one thing that happens here is I've got a blinking cursor at the end here, so I can just put my cursor at the end and start typing THRU. And the stuff in the angle brackets here will still match the dimension, but now my extra text there will stay. So I can add to the already calculated dimension. Okay.
Very cool.
Now, with these drawings in Fusion, everything is linked together. I'll close this out. There we go. If I go back to my box model and start changing things, let's go back into our parameters, model parameters, and well, let's tweak our inside dimension back down to 4 inches by 3 inches. You can see our box is updated. And let's say material thickness, let's make that 3/8 or 0.375. Now everything should have updated here in the model. I'll click OK on these parameters and save it. Now if I jump back over to the drawing up in the tabs at the top here, if you look up at the top title bar where the menus are, there's a little yellow triangle that's telling you there's a warning. If I hover over it, it says the drawing is out of date. It's referencing an older version of the design. So if I just click on that, it's going to load up the updated design. All of my views are now showing the 3/8 inch thickness around the outside. It's showing the new height here. So this is 2 3/8. Now the dimension here is it should be 2.375, but our drawing has a sort of precision set into it. If I go to the sheet settings, let's see, nope. There we go. So annotation settings, there's some buttons at the bottom of the drawing window. Second one from the right says annotation settings. If I go to this menu here, we've got a bunch of different options here, but one of them is the linear dimension precision. So if I want these all to go out to 3 decimal points, oh, there you go, it has to think for a second. Apparently Fusion doesn't like me doing that right now.
To say, if you're going to 3 decimal points, you're not a woodworker. So.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to show you here, if I can. Software problem has caused Fusion 360 to close unexpectedly. All right, let's get that back up.
I don't know. I'd say that's pretty good. This is our 5th class and the first time we've ever had an issue, so no gripes there.
Yep, I'll take it.
Of course, using SketchUp, I have this happen often.
Oh, nice. Fusion wants to update itself right now. That's okay. It downloads in the background, so it won't disrupt us too much. All right. Find my TMA Fusion project. Open up our drawing. Oh, and it still has the older version here. Give it a second to load. So it's giving me the warning here because last time I saved it was the previous version of the box. So I'll click the warning. Now it's going to load up the 3/8 inch thickness and everything else. That's good. All right, so the other thing I was going to show you, Wizzy, you mentioned woodworking dimensions. We'll go back into our annotation settings, and you can set the defaults for these through Fusion preferences, but usually I just do this per drawing. Under linear unit format, you can do decimal or fractional. So I'll pick fractional, and now it's showing all these dimensions in fractions, which is great, but this can also bite you if you're not paying attention. So this height, the side is 2 inches and the material is 3/8. That should be 2 3/8, but it says 2 1/2. So you can get bit by that precision again, because when you go to fractional dimensions, if we go look at our linear dimension precision now, it's showing everything to the nearest 1/4 of an inch.
Oh, wow.
So that's just the default.
So that again, program is a framer.
Yep, if you're building a house, you might be able to get away with that. Not for the trim work, though. But if I set that precision all the way up to 1/64th, I mean, it's not going to show me everything in 64ths, but it's going to show me the nearest fraction. So now this is showing 2 3/8 like it should. And you know, here is our chamfer at a 1/16th of an inch. You get those nice fractional dimensions like you would expect. So that's actually a fairly new thing. Several months ago when I was doing some plans for another project of mine, they didn't have fractional dimensions, so I had to go and double-click all the dimensions and type them in manually. So now that that's here, that's huge. Save that. Just a habit of saving things. Other thing to show you a bit about, you have this big title block at the bottom, which you can fill in. It's got some of it filled in already here with the project name, the title of the model. I can double-click this and I get a whole window here of stuff that I can fill in. I can say approved by Izzy. Click OK.
And not if it's a 1/4 inch dimension.
Oh, we fixed that though. We're all good. But if Izzy's not happy with my drawing, I can click on this title block and delete it.
No, it looks good.
Sometimes that's too much stuff. I don't need that on screen. But I deleted that for a reason, so I can make space for something else here. And this, you may not always need this, but if you're making an assembly with a lot of parts, it can be handy to have a list bill of materials. So under this toolbar here where it says BOM, that's bill of materials, I can pull that down and choose parts list. Click on that. And oh, it's asking me which view do I want to generate a parts list for. So technically all these views are tied to the same box, but I'll just pick this one. Oh, hold on. Didn't mean to put it there. Parts list. Oh, now it just, never mind. Maybe it was just trying to tell me where to put it, but anyway. So I've got this list. I can snap it to the bottom. And now, there we go. Let's zoom up on it. Now we can see we've got one base. Side A and side B have quantities of 2. And the reason it has a quantity of 2 is because back in our model, we did a copy-paste on those components. So they're the same component, but there's 2 instances of them. So then Fusion can tell, oh, that's not just 2 separate sides, that's 2 of the same side. So your bill of materials makes a little bit more sense here. You've got a quantity of 2 on those. Description of material. Whenever you model something in Fusion, it defaults to being made out of steel, which if you're welding, that's just fine, but we're going to be making this out of wood. So if I jump back to my model here, and let's say pick the base, right-click on the base. For that component, I can drag down and say physical material. So if I have a complicated assembly and I've got a mix of plastic and wood and metal, I get this window that says physical material and various categories here. So I'll pick, where did it go? At the bottom here, wood. I click on that, it expands out, And I've got a whole bunch of options here to pick from. So I'm just going to say maple. And I'll take this little maple item here and click and drag it onto my base piece. I can drag it onto the picture, or I can drag it onto the item over in the browser here. And let's do the same for all the side pieces. So I'm just clicking and dragging this maple. So I see I drug it onto one side piece and it changed both of them. Same here. Now it doesn't really look like wood, but I close that window, we'll save it. But all I've done is tell Fusion that no, I want these pieces to be made out of maple, and it changed the appearance a little bit, but the main thing is that will flow through to our bill of materials. So again, up at the top, I've got that yellow triangle warning me that I'm not in sync with the latest version. So if I click on that, none of my drawings have changed because I didn't change any dimensions, but now in the bill of materials, they all say maple. So if you build a little intelligence into your model, you know, by copying components and pasting them so they're all linked together, you can get quantities. You could put in materials. Same with descriptions. I can say, if I right-click on the base here, here we go. Oh. Properties, there we go. If I right-click on a component and say properties, I can give it a part number, a part name, a description. I can call this the bottom piece. And this type of thing gets a little bit more useful if you're, say, importing parts from McMaster Car. Maybe you have a part number you want to throw in there. So again, if I save that and go back to my drawing, I can update my drawing again, and that stuff flows through here. Now it says bottom piece for the description. So you can get all your basic views of your part. You can put dimensions on things, you can get cross-section views, you can zoom up on details, you can fill out your title block or drop in a bill of materials if you want. One other thing I'll mention is that there's no built-in way to print here. If I hit Control P, nothing happens. And sometimes that gets a little annoying, I'll be honest. Sometimes I just want to print it out. But sort of going with Fusion's philosophy of everything being electronic and cloud-based, you can generate a PDF or a DWG file, but you can't just print to your printer. So I can say output PDF from the toolbar here, and I can save that drawing to my desktop, and from there I could open the PDF and print it.
Very cool. Couple quick questions. Jerry Benish has asked, if you want to assign one material to all of the other parts, could you drag it into a parent box 5 level?
Totally. I will go back to the box model here. So one thing I've done here, I just right-click in the middle of the space here, and I could say physical material just to pull up that window. And there's probably a menu item up here for it as well. But let's pick wood again, for example, and let's say cherry. I can click and drag cherry all the way up and drop it on the top level of my assembly, the box assembly here. Now it's applied it, oh, and it's got a little visual appearance too. It applied it to all the pieces. Save it, and then that should flow through once I update my drawing. There's cherry.
Nice. Is there a way to put sizes on the BOM?
They would probably have to be part of the description. I don't think you can automatically generate that stuff, but say I had a bolt, I might go into the description of that component, the properties of that component, and type it in as a 3-inch bolt or a 4-inch bolt.
All right, guys. Well, this was a fun class. Last class will be next week, Wednesday, 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern, and who knows what it's going to be way out in the west side of the world. Ben, is there anything you want to add to this before we call our quits for the night?
One quick thing, just to see a question that popped up in the chat that I forgot to show. Somebody asked if I could label the parts in the drawing. You do get a balloon tool here in the bill of materials, so I can pick one of the pieces, drag it out, but it just fills in a number, so number 3 here, and that corresponds to item 3 in my bill of materials. So I can label stuff that way, at least automatically. I could put in just a text with an arrow on it. It's called a leader, so under text, leader, and type in whatever I want.
Butt joint.
Perfect. Here we go. We gotta end this on a classy note, right there.
God.
Perfect.
Very cool. Very cool. Ben, thanks again for teaching the class, and we'll see everybody